Lifeboat Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hey everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you're on the lifeboat. Thank you everybody for stopping by tonight. Let's, you know what, I thought I had this squared away. Give me 2 seconds. This is my, I have the 2 views here. I have the views where I can look at my bobble-headed partner, and then I have the other view, which enables me to read all of the cool things that everyone is saying. So let me get that set up here, and then we'll be good to go. I don't know if you noticed, we got a slightly different setup with the camera. So there's at least 4 more inches of me that is visible now. In the past, it's sort of like shoulders up, and I wanted to play with that a little bit. Leisure Beast, Flaming Jackson, Niall, good to see you, brother. Swiss Vapor, glad you're here. Denise, awesome. This is Cemetery is here. Great. Stacy Michaels. Well, I'm glad you all are here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about one of my least favorite subjects. And I think I'm not alone on this. I want to talk about disappointment. And occasionally, somebody will ask me, I've been asked this often, whether or not when I do a video, if I'm thinking about one person, if I'm talking to one person individually. And to me, this is usually a pretty good sign that I've done something right. If somebody thinks that I'm talking directly to them, and that's usually why they would ask that question, then I feel like maybe I did something right, especially if I wasn't addressing that individual. I feel like maybe I'm doing something that everybody sort of gets something out of. This would be one of the rare times when I absolutely am doing this video with one person in mind. And this time the person is me, because I'm on a good tear. I said this yesterday, I'm on a really good run. And what we do at the lifeboat will always be one of these. It's always going to be one of these, right? You're flying high in April and you're shot down in May. And that's sort of the nature of what we do. And the reason behind that is because we're not dealing with a subject matter that's lighthearted. We're truthfully trying to get people to get sober, and we're trying to get people to live their best lives. And we're trying to, especially with everything going on, and I've been beating that drum loud, so I won't beat it anymore tonight, but we're really trying to save people's lives. And when we fall short of that mark, no matter how much you try to say, and we have this conversation all the time. Mark and I talk about it. I talk about it with friends. You can't save everybody, right? So what you do is you go out there and you put out a message and you hope that it resonates. And then, it's kind of like pasta, you throw it up against something to see if it sticks, right? The stuff that hits the floor, you just sort of sweep it away. The stuff that sticks there, that stuff you can work with. And that's one of the ways that I've always tried to view this. But no matter how much you say that, it's not possible. It really isn't one of those things that you can do because they're not numbers, they're people. And for that reason, it's always going to be an up and down. It's going to be a roller coaster. And right now we're flying pretty high. We're doing some really great things. And uh, sprinkled in that, especially because we're dealing with the new year, have been some disappointments. There are some people who used over the January 1st holiday. And today I got an email from somebody that has been doing well for a really long time. And it's not somebody that, like, they might be watching tonight, but you won't know that because they're an individual that is almost religious about watching our videos. What they're not religious about is talking. They're very much an observer. And for whatever reason, they want their comments to be not for the world to read. So we email each other back and forth all the time. And before you wonder, this is not a Daniel. This gentleman has been with the lifeboat from the very beginning, but he got drunk last night. And well, he admitted that he got drunk last night. And then when he came clean on that, he told me that it's been an occurrence that's been happening for a decent chunk of December. And this is really more like it, honestly. People who use and make a mistake and stumble and then immediately tell you about it, that's not the norm. That's the exception. But he felt the need today to come clean. And he did this on the heels of a disappointment that was currently happening with me. And, in the email, he said, "I'm really sorry that I've let you down." And I don't know that I've ever had a chance to talk about this on video. I know I've talked about it with people individually, and I've said stuff like, "Hey, you're not letting anybody down." I say things like that, but I'm not sure that. So it's one of those things that I would like to articulate. You're not letting me down. Nobody on this planet owes me sobriety. Nobody on this planet owes me anything. If you're trying to get sober, I would imagine that there are some people you put on that first page, whether you did it the way I did. There are some people for whom you're trying to get sober other than yourself. Whether or not you let those people down is something that you have to answer, but you didn't let me down. I'm going to continue to make videos. I'm going to continue to do what I do. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like, I let Tommy down or I let down the crew. That's absolutely ridiculous. Number one, and I know that this is a slippery slope because if you say it enough, people think it's almost a license to relapse, but it is a part of this. It's an accepted part of this. This is what happens. And, that's fine. But you cannot let me down, right? And still have me be disappointed. I'm not disappointed in him. I'm disappointed for him. You understand? I'm not judging this person because they stumbled, but I feel awful for him. I know that right now, as I'm doing this video, he's kicking the ever-loving hell out of himself because he stumbled. And that's pointless. It really is. One of the things that disappointment is supposed to do, and this goes back to when we were, the dawn of man kind of stuff. The purpose of disappointment is an education tool. It really is. The purpose of disappointment is in theory supposed to make us stronger. It's supposed to be a device that we use to get smarter about certain things. And my hope for anyone who stumbles is that when you're feeling that disappointment in yourself, number one, don't clog that on top of it with the, "Oh Lord, I've let the crew down." You didn't let down us. You didn't. It's part of a process, and you don't owe us a thing. You really don't. I would love for you to attend. I would love for you to be here, and I'd love for you to participate. And in a perfect world, you get sober and you pay it forward. That's the concept of a lot of what happens in group therapy. If you look at the 12th step of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any 12-step program, having had a spiritual awakening, based on the steps, you then want to take that message to other people. You can rephrase that any way you want, but it is a phenomenon that seems to happen with people who get sober. Once they realize that you don't have to live the life you were living, most feel some compulsion to try to help other people. Not everyone, but oftentimes that is something that happens. So while you're going through this process of feeling like maybe, maybe I've let myself down, or I've let down my family, or I feel, disappointed, learn from it. Don't say, well, it's part of the relapse process. No big deal. I drank a 12 pack, and then just start from scratch. If that happens, I am disappointed. I really am, because this is supposed to be a learning process. Every single time you use again, you should be stronger when you quit the next day. You should go back and look at what you did that caused the problem and deal with it. And I'll tell you something, that magic happens when you do that. Because when disappointment becomes a learning tool, it is a lot easier to get over. You understand? Now, the second disappointment that I was talking about today is not the fault of anybody. It was circumstance. Yesterday, I did a video on medical assisted therapy, and there's somebody in the group, and he has said use anything about my story, and has been very vocal about that. And today we had him lined up for medical assisted therapy. And as I said yesterday, boy, we did some gymnastics to make that happen. And the computer system said, you know what? You have a prescription that is still active. Well, addicts don't use their prescription the way that they're told. He's been out of this prescription for a very long time. But from a legal standpoint, they're not going to write another prescription until that one is gone, not as in it has been consumed, meaning that the days are gone. And that is going to mean about another 3 days that this individual has to tough this out. And I can't begin to tell you how disappointed I was. This was like getting kicked in the stomach, because I know what he's going through, and I know what this can do in his life. And the thought that he had to go, another 72 hours of suffering and doing what he's doing and working and, overcoming, it was tough. It really was. And I found myself slipping from disappointment into depression, which is what happens if you don't deal with disappointment when it first starts, right? If you allow it to fester, all of a sudden, instead of being disappointed, you become depressed. And that's, it slides down that rabbit hole. It's not a good thing. And then an amazing thing happened. The guy whose life is getting really wrecked on by circumstance did some magic stuff. If you want to overcome feelings of disappointment, psychology says that there's a 5-step method that you use. Again, they think I'm raising my hand. I can't put 5 fingers up without and the 5 steps are used. The first one is, they say, let it out, right? Don't hold it in. Whatever you do, when disappointment comes, if you bottle it up, just like everything else we talk about, right? Bottling everything up is a bad idea. Bottling anything up is a bad idea. And disappointment is nothing unique on that. The second thing that they say is get perspective. And in talking to this individual, I got perspective. 11 years this has been going on. 11 years of this man's life. He has been worrying about the chase. He's been worrying about all of the things that come with being addicted to an opiate. And I remember all of those. Every single one of them was my life for 3 decades. But I've been far enough away from it where that perspective is gone. And all I could think about was 72 hours. This guy's got to go 3 days. And then it occurred to us that he went for 4,018 some days or somewhere in there, struggling with this. And all of a sudden, this was kind of put in perspective, right? This terrible part of his life, 4,018 days, there's 3 left. When you start looking at big picture stuff, the suffering's over, right? He's at the finish line. If you had told him 400 days ago that this was going to end on such and such a day, right now he'd be partying, right? He'd be waving his arms in the air and high-fiving people and saying, I got 3 days left. But disappointment almost always, sometimes we create our own heartbreak through our expectations, right? And I think that's what happened. We expected that, the moment was going to be today. What we should have been celebrating was the fact that this was going to be a new chapter in his life, not the moment of which the suffering stops, but the fact that he was about to set up base camp for the climb that he was going to make for the rest of his life, because getting clean isn't the finish line. And that's kind of how we were treating it. The amazing thing is, this is what I do all day, right? But it took someone who was in the throes of suffering to sort of pull me out of it. And, when you talk to psychologists and they talk about the process and the 5 things, when they say get perspective, the way you do that is never by yourself. The advice that they give for getting perspective is to contact friends, people in group settings, family members, whatever the case may be, and talk to them and say, this is why I am disappointed. Because more often than not, someone who is removed from the situation and the emotion will immediately give you perspective, right? They always say something, and at first you kind of want to grab them around the throat and just sort of choke them a little bit, because getting perspective when you're disappointed is never a fun process. It honestly was amazing that this came from him. And it's a hats off moment to a guy that gets it, to a guy that's intestinal fortitude is more than my own. And the real crux of the disappointment for me was because I remembered my weakness, right? As I started to look back on my time as as someone who was addicted and using, I thought to myself, I didn't go 3 days. If I was a guy that could go 3 days, I wouldn't have robbed banks, right? I didn't go a day. I didn't go 8 hours. I was a person that did whatever it was going to take in order to make sure that those feelings went away. This is a guy who's all in. This is a guy that shoved every single chip into the table. He's not changing his life because of medical assisted therapy. He's changing his life because he's sick and tired of being sick and tired. Medical assisted therapy is going to help with that. And it was a really beautiful thing to see perspective from 2 different angles. Here was me going, oh, woe is us. And I'm not going to say that he didn't say woe is me, because of course he did. But he got over it really quickly. And then an amazing thing happened. And he sent me a text message that said, you know what? If this hasn't come up before, it is something that might come up again. You need to make sure that everybody that's listening realizes this before they go in, so that this isn't something that is going to happen again to somebody else. At that point, I probably could have run at top speed underneath my front door while it was closed, because you want to talk about a little perspective. Here was a guy in the throes of the suffering that I was feeling disappointed about, and he was thinking about paying it forward for other people. And again, it's a beautiful opportunity to really take a look at what happens when people shove every chip into the center of the table. It really is a unique opportunity to see what happens when someone jumps to that 12th step from the very beginning and says, you know what, just like the day before when he said, use my story in any way that you want, use my story. That's something that doesn't happen when people are suffering. That's something that happens after you're done, and you feel like, and you could puff your chest out and say, you know what, I did that. Go ahead and use my story. It's a testimony, not just to him, but to what the environment that he has entered has done already, right? So if my perspective had changed right at the beginning, I would have been pounding my chest at just what an amazing vessel this is, right? This boat really is. It's a vessel for change for so many people. This is already doing the stuff that I don't seem capable of keeping up with, right? When Mark and I say, boy, it really is about the crew. If you're not seeing that right now, then chances are you're chatting and not listening to what I'm saying, because this was the crew at their very best. This was an example of, just the kind of people that are starting to assemble here. Right in the throes of all of this, he was thinking about the next guy. And it was great because what's supposed to happen. Remember the video I did like a million years ago about the birds flying south and how that lead bird sort of flaps his wings harder than everyone else because he creates that updraft and all of the other birds can simply ride along on that. So the birds in the very end, they're getting the updraft from 20 or 30 birds and they can basically coast. And because of that, they will eventually go to the front, right? And that's how they basically do this in shifts so that they can get there. When I was at that moment where I didn't feel like my arms could move anymore, he immediately went to the front. And within about 10 minutes, I was gritting my teeth and saying, you know what? We're going to get through this together, right? If you need to talk to somebody, and then he did something else that drives me nuts. So I'll tell you. He said, you know what? I feel like I'm texting you too much. If you're in it and you're in that stage of recovery and you're feeling like, the world's got you down, there's no such thing as texting me too much. I mean, if you're texting me to tell me that there's a great movie on Netflix and you feel the need to tell me that 7 times, you're probably not doing anybody a real service. But if you're reaching out for help, I'm never going to say to you, hey, back off a little bit. And if I do, I should quit my gig and let somebody else do this. This is what floats my boat. And it means a lot to me that the crew is what it is. And it means a lot to me that the effort of the crew creates an updraft that keeps Mark and I going. Perspective is the best part of this list. The next one is know yourself. If you know yourself during this process, then you could probably evaluate exactly why it is you're disappointed. If you know that you're acquiring a new vehicle and you build it up in your head that when you go down to this car lot, you're going to get yourself a Ferrari, and you go down there with your $3,900 budget, you realize that a Ferrari is probably not something that's realistic. And that creates disappointment. Obviously, people, I'm using hyperbole for the purpose of making this point. But so oftentimes we build our things up of how great or how bad things are going to be. And then because of that, we're disappointed. It's like we create these moments of great disappointment because we build something in our head of just how great this is going to be. And I'm going to be honest with you. Part of me was really looking forward to that moment when he said, I can't believe that I don't feel that desire to use. And I built that up like I was waiting on that, like a kid that was going to open a present underneath the tree on the 25th. It's not about me, and it's not about that moment. You know what I mean? It's about him, and it's about the rest of his life. And he has that perspective far more than I do, which is amazing because he's in it and he's living it. But knowing yourself is huge. And this is a great opportunity for the captain of this boat. This is why I said this video is really about me. But I need to know myself, and I need to realize that this is going to be something that happens to me a lot over the course of the time that I do this, because I beat the drum pretty loud about medical assisted therapy. And I'm riding a pretty good wave of people that have gotten involved in MAT who are killing it, right? I get texts from them all the time, and I get direct messages that say, this saved my life. You can't know how amazing I feel. And I wanted that again. It's not about me. It's not about that email. It's not about that direct message. It's about the person. And knowing myself now, it's not something I'm going to do the next time. I also am going to find out when the prescription is up, right? So that I don't put somebody into a situation like I did him, because that just plain stinks. No matter how much effort, we put in, not being aware that could happen was just awful. And it's something I should have honestly been thinking about. The computer systems these days, people, Mark and I are, what's the word I'm looking for? We're not young men. And when we were in active addiction, you could have 6 doctors writing you prescriptions because the systems were just not organized enough. Pay attention, because this is a fact. If you think you're going to go to 2 doctors and get a prescription for Percocet, you're going to get caught and you're going to go to prison, right? This just doesn't happen anymore. The systems are now so integrated that, and you know what? It's a good system. It really is. It's a good system. It's a good system that it's in place. And today it bit us, but tomorrow it's going to save somebody who probably would have doubled or tripled up on some drugs that, don't need to be doubled and tripled up on. But yeah, knowing yourself. The fourth thing that they will tell you to do in psychology is that acceptance phase. And what's amazing is this individual hit the acceptance phase without getting to any of the other ones. I mean, honestly, perspective was 6 seconds and all of a sudden it was accepted. And he said, the way I'm going to view this, I've already been gone. There's been days that I've already been doing this. So I'm just going to look at it like I'm more than half done, and all of a sudden acceptance and perspective were right there in front of me. And I'm not going to lie to you, people. I was in utter amazement. I really was. This was one of those situations where all of a sudden, I was flying high again. And like I said, it's this number. It really is. And sometimes that roller coaster goes up and down 3 times in a day. The day before was that way too. Let's make a decision that this is what we're going to do and we're going to stick with it. And I'm going to get rid of the pain specialist and I'm going down that road. Whee! And that best appointment I can get is for 8 days later. And you just start to crash and you go, oh, you got to be kidding. And then you go through all that and it's, the appointment's tomorrow morning, right? And you just start doing this up and down and up and down. Acceptance is a beautiful thing. It isn't an easy thing. Make no mistake. Acceptance is difficult because it doesn't jive with everything we've done up to this stage, right? What did we do when we really needed to accept something as an addict, right? We went to whatever our, drug of choice was, because acceptance is difficult and it requires a mindset and it requires a set of tools that we don't often really have very well developed if we're an addict. So as opposed to going that route, well, it's just a whole lot easier to say, screw acceptance. I'm going to get high or I'm going to get loaded or I'm going to get whatever. I'll tweak. I'll get drunk, whatever the case may be. But it's people, if you open your eyes on the lifeboat, if you watch what's happening with people who are struggling, it's a unique opportunity to actually learn from others, and as opposed to just learning from yourself. More often than not, we only learn from our own mistakes, right? And they say smart people learn from their own mistakes and geniuses learn from other people's. You don't just have to learn from mistakes. You can learn from other people's triumphs. And make no mistake about it, today was a triumph. I said, if there's anything that I can do, and I mean, it's kind of a hollow thing to say. What the heck can I do? What he said doesn't appear on this list, but he said, you know what, you can pray for me. And if I text you, be there. Well, those are 2 things that I absolutely can do. Whoa, are you there? You know what? I am definitely going to, the messages are already going to be flying any second about the size of my fingers. But I don't either, but I can assure you it was not my large hands this time. I actually had a beverage. Everybody get that? I'm not seeing that. Okay. Well, that's kind of unique, isn't it? People, right now I'm having a conversation with my bobbleheaded partner. And apparently you cannot hear that. That's okay. Something, yeah, it's something we're working on. And that's probably a really good thing. Yep, we're learning. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Okay, we've got this under control. The last of the five things that they say about disappointment is, I think, very much like the second, right? The second is to get perspective. And the way you do that is you talk to other people. Well, the fifth is you don't let it fester. And I think often people that we try to hop to that, we try to accept things before we get any kind of perspective on it. And what that basically means is that we accept it at its worst. This is an error. And this is an error that addicts do on a day-to-day basis. And the reason is, just like we've talked about so many times, we hang crepe, if you know what that expression is, right? We go with the worst possible case scenario for what could happen, right? So picture a completely different scenario for today. There was an individual who out there that could have very easily gone, you know what? I knew it. I knew it. Way too good to be true. Screw it. Now, there's no perspective, right? But he absolutely could have gone to acceptance. And the acceptance could have looked like this. I'm just going to go see the pain specialist. I'm going to go get my issue. I'm going to get back on this. I was wasting my time. Those idiots on the boat don't know squat, right? When you go that route, the fifth phase of this, which is to not let it fester. If you accept something when it's at its worst, I can assure you it will fester. If you have never looked up the word fester, it's not a pleasant word. It really isn't. And very often, especially within medical terms, it almost always is used to describe infection, right? When you get a foreign body that gets inside the body, right? So, and this is something that I got to learn a whole lot about with 30 years of my life spent in addiction, because you use needles. And I mean, let's be really honest, you're not taking out an alcohol pad every single time. And, as much as you'd like to say things like, well, I always used a brand new needle. It's just not the facts. I mean, I didn't share needles with people, but I most assuredly used some of them until they were really well used. And what happens is it picks up bacteria, you get it underneath the skin, something gets underneath there, and it festers. And when it festers, things start to grow, and you get swelling and you get just nastiness. If you've ever watched that awful show about the woman that pops things, the Miss Pimple Popper or Dr. Pimple Popper, whatever her name is, anytime you get that kind of growth that's going underneath the skin, you have something inside festering. They use this term not by accident. I promise you that when they write this stuff out, they think about it at great lengths. But that's exactly what's happening in the brain. If you allow disappointment to fester, it's no different. Inside your gray matter, you've got thoughts upon thoughts upon thoughts. And the next thing you know, automatic negative thoughts just begin to fester, and they begin to take on a life of their own. And what it can do to you in terms of short-circuiting your success and your outlook on life is phenomenal. Today wasn't a banner day. It really wasn't. And acceptance for me had to come with perspective. The individual who drank, today, the reason that he felt the need to tell me the truth is because he doesn't want to do it anymore. That probably would have been the thing to focus on. And then he wanted to tell me that he didn't just get drunk last night. That's how the conversation started. And when I say conversation, people, I don't talk to anybody. You understand? So we're going back and forth. And by the time we're done texting, he admitted to me how many times he had drank. He admitted to me that the entire month of December was pretty much a wash. And that should have been a moment of real perspective, right? If I had looked at that and said, man, I think he might have learned something. I think the month of December might have been the best thing that ever happened to him in the scheme of it. He was philosophical. He started to talk about the fact that, you know what, looking back on it, I think I was probably in a relapse in early November, right? I should have been clapping my hands. I should have been looking at this and going, disappointment for this cat was a learning experience. It did what it was supposed to do. You know what? Mark's funny. But yeah, the way I looked at it was wrong. It really was. So for me, today has been a learning experience. It really has. And as I was preparing to talk about this tonight, sorry, as I was preparing to talk about this tonight, and I got to that third part of this entire process, know yourself. Well, I found a great deal of character defects, which should not be a shock to anybody, because I've been pretty open with the fact that I'm loaded with character defects, right? And after spending, the vast majority of my life building nothing in the EQ department, I'd like to believe I built some stuff in IQ. I worked on some things in my life that I can still take the knowledge of which and move forward. But my EQ is not where it should be. And I'm not sure if it's ever going to be where it should be, but it got better today. It really did. It got better today. And today, two individuals who had really different experiences with disappointment taught me amazing amounts. And they didn't just teach me amazing amounts about sobriety. Although, make no mistake, I learned a lot about sobriety and the I say all the time, right? It's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's a life. Well, I learned a lot about that life today. And I learned it from two individuals, one of whom had zero control over the disappointment that came down the pike. Nothing that he could have done would have changed what happened to him today. And he lifted me up when I was depressed about his situation. That's amazing. And that gave me the opportunity to learn not only about sobriety, but about this boat, about the type of people that this message attracts. You understand? The type of people who are attracted, not just the message, but by all of you, right? We talked about this yesterday. The way that this individual was treated, I'll never know. I don't think anyone will ever know if this is just the stuff that he's made of, or if it's a combination of this is the stuff that he's made of, and then seeing all of you in the boat and how everybody treats one another sort of was an inspiration because throughout the whole thing, he said, I don't know, the next 3 days are going to be tough. I'll tell you one thing, I'm not leaving the boat. He just kept saying over and over again. And the other thing, people, and I kind of wanted to save this towards the end of talking about his story, because this was another one of those moments where you just go, wow, but the story was going to be better. He literally was philosophical enough in the throes of what he's going through to say, this is going to be a hell of a story, when this is done. And all the time, people who find the boat and get sober and get excited about it will say things like, you know what, I can never thank you enough. Of course you can. Honestly, you could do it once and you've thanked us enough. But I said, you know what, your story is going to touch people's lives, because there's going to be people in the future who are going to be right where you were. And you're going to be in a position where what you've been through is going to touch lives and it's going to save somebody. There's somebody out there. They don't know it yet, but they need to hear your story, and they need to hear it, how it went down with the disappointment and with all of that. And his response was, I can't wait. I can't wait for that opportunity. I'm not sure. I am sure I couldn't have done that in the same situation. Really. Maybe if I had found a group of people that invited me in and said, you're going to make it and all of that, I don't know. I didn't find that. But I'd like to believe that I could have been that philosophical in that exact same position. I honestly don't believe I could have been, but I'd like to believe that I could have been. You know what I mean? But so going forward, right? What's the takeaway? The takeaway from all of this is this. We all are going to get to base camp. I believe that. I believe everybody here is going to get to the base camp. We're going to be chemical free. The question becomes, from there, what happens, right? That's not the end of the story. It's the start of the story. This man's story is just starting. How do you deal with this stuff going forward? One of the things that they don't put down on this, that honestly I think really needs to be the sixth uh, part of this, and this is Tommy's addition. This is not anything that psychologists or psychiatrists say, but I think number six ought to be, don't forget it. Really, I think that one of the most important takeaways of this is, don't forget the disappointment, for real, because the next time it comes, that should be something that goes, oh, you know what, been there, done that, right? Been there, because I'm going to be doing this again. This is going to be something I'm going to go through. And I promise you, the next time something like this happens, I'm not going to have that meltdown. When the person that needs me to be strong for them, I'm going to be strong for them. I'm not going to have to lean on them, right, to get through that process. I assure you, I'm never going to forget this. I also assure you that I'm not going to forget it if somebody calls and says, hey, you know what, I haven't really been completely forthcoming with you. You know, I've been drinking for the last month. That's their disappointment. You know, that's that's something that if I add to that, then I'm a failure. For real. And if I drag whatever's going on in my life into that, I'm failing, because it came on the heels of what had just happened. And I thought, oh, beautiful. You know, here we go. I mean, one hell of a day. And I guaranteed that's not the attitude that this person needed. And I'll get a direct message from him tonight that'll say, you weren't like that. That's how I felt. I'm not exactly sure how I came across, but that is how I felt. And I'm not going to let that happen again, truthfully. So today's message, I'm not lecturing anybody here but me. Honestly, this is about the shortcomings that this is how I dealt with it. And I'm not 100% fired up about how I dealt with everything today. However, the people on the boat who had far more reason to really be messed up carried me through it. It says a lot about who the people on this boat is. It says a lot about the kind of people that you are drawing in. It says a lot about the kind of people you're keeping, because the idea of wanting to get sober is what brings people here, right? That's the kind of thing people are looking for when they find the lifeboat. But the reception that they get, the treatment they get from you people, is what keeps them here. And I really wholeheartedly believe that it changes the focus of each and every person that arrives. Instantly, they become part of a community, and that community is there for them. They feel it. It's real. It's palpable. So don't stop doing what you're doing. Keep doing exactly the same way that you're doing it. For those of you who pray, this individual could probably use a few prayers in the next 3 days, right? And be here for the people that need them, you know, that need those, the little bit of encouragement, a little uplifting. The more that you're here for those people, the more we're going to be successful. And success here is judged by one person at a time, right? And not ones that hit the subscribe button, but ones that get to the base camp. I have reached the part of this where I like to hand this over to my bobble-headed partner, who now has the opportunity, by the way, to crack jokes in my ear that you guys can't hear.
I'll try not
How you
to do
doing,
that
Mark?
too often. I'm doing okay.
No, I
guys.
like it. Are you feeling? How you feeling?
I'm doing okay today. You know, kind of like plateauing out a little bit, I guess. But yeah,
Good.
it's I feel like it might be on the upswing, but
Nice.
So I'm hoping it continues to move there.
Thank God.
Yeah, and I think you hit it right on the head. You know, the perspective is exactly what we have to focus on. If we're not looking at any situation in your life from the right side or from the correct viewpoint, it's all going to look different. You know, you guys know, a lot of you guys probably know my channel and stuff, and I actually use that word perspective very often, because when we're looking at the sun, we get one viewpoint from the front, and we get one the sun looks totally different from the side. So it's one of those things that, you know, especially people like me and Tommy that are out here trying to do this and trying to help others, sometimes we lose sight of that a little. I don't think it ever goes away, but sometimes we're so wrapped up into trying to help somebody when it doesn't pan out the way that we really hope that it would. It does stick you on that roller coaster he talked to you about, and I think that goes on down into each individual's struggle in daily life. And just to give you a little another, I guess, perspective on this subject, this isn't really related to addiction or anything, but my wife, she had a hip problem, so she went to the doctor and had tests ran and everything, and then the doctor calls us and says, "Hey, you need to come in. We need to talk." And that's something you don't ever want to hear from a doctor. We all get that, right? So we're freaking out, whatever. So we go into the office, and there was a high likelihood of her having cancer in her hip. Just to put it in perspective there again too, using that word, she does not. Okay, so don't nobody go there with it, but we didn't know that at the time. And I was there to give her support, right? But I'm the one that got the support because I broke down. I mean, and she's the one who was like, "Hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right." And sometimes that's what happens in what we're doing here. We want so badly to help people that sometimes it can pull us in that direction, and we get the support from the person that probably needs more support than what we were trying to give. Yeah. And that was case in point. I had to leave the office and everything. I felt horrible when I got out to the car. I couldn't even go back in the doctor's office. I mean, I was really that and she was fine. At least she appeared to be. You know what I mean? And she's the one out there consoling me. So what I'm saying is sometimes when you care about somebody or you care about something, it can, it definitely, when you're focused on that one thing and it doesn't happen the way you think that it should, the help's going to come from the person that you thought you were trying to help. And I say this a lot too. The second you think you know everything about anything is the second you stop learning. You absolutely cannot learn past that point because you think you already know all of it. So what does anybody else have to offer? So what that does is not only does that, it doesn't even change your perspective. You no longer have one because you're already there. You don't have to look at it anymore in your mind because you think you got it all figured out. You know what I'm saying? So that perspective isn't even there at all, period. So and it's a thing that I really truly think that's a natural way for us to get to that point. Okay? I'm not saying don't be confident in what you're saying. I'm not saying don't be confident in anything that you're doing. I'm saying be able to see the help or be able to see the truth of what's going on in your life when it presents it. No matter what direction it's coming from, it doesn't matter. It's such a perspective is such a key point in everything. And I'm not just saying that, guys. It really is. And sorry, guys. Sorry about that. But yeah, and this is something we will always struggle with a little bit. And I think something else that was touched on here a little bit is the fact that, we're trying to become new people, right? But are we really? Because I caught myself, this is my own, and I see it with a lot of other people. Most of us have life before addiction and life after. It's like our turning point, right? But so oftentimes I find myself trying to go back to the person I was before my addiction. I'm not that person. As much as all the drug addiction and stuff was really, really bad and all the stuff that was around it, well, I took my own advice and didn't think I knew everything, and I was able to learn. I grew. I was a better being after my addiction than what I was before. So don't struggle with trying to get back to who you were. Just get to who you're supposed to be. And sometimes that's just, you walk around it and you help other people with it. And like I said before, sometimes the best teachers are the ones that are going through a situation or just freshly got out of that situation. When I worked at the factory, we would always have somebody that was training a new employee. One of our rules there were you couldn't have worked there longer than a year if you were going to train somebody, because that person had just freshly got out of their own training. So they were showing people these kinds of things in a certain way. And it really does apply to what we do. It really does. So don't ever forget who you were for one reason. It's so you can be better than that. You don't have to struggle to get back to where you were. It's, and with what we're talking about here, trying to help somebody, and that person's the one that actually gave the help. But it was what we didn't talk about is that there was still help being given, both directions. And I think that's what we have to understand. This is not a solo type of situation in anybody's life. If you're trying to run through it solo, I'm sorry, because that's a hard thing to do. Bordering on impossible without at least having somebody you can talk to, whether you know them or not. I don't, like Tommy says, he's using his fingers to talk. You don't have to verbalize it to somebody. You can just, there's a bunch of avenues, and and me and Tommy know, pretty good avenues to send you guys down. There's a lot of avenues out there you can try. And, again, everybody's situation is different. And that's why Tommy and myself, we handle it on the individual basis. This is what it is. It's the only way it works. Only way it works.
Bingo. You know what? There's a great message here from Niall. It says, learning is a two-way dialogue. What we know, what we think we know, and vice versa. And the perspective is when you meet in the middle. I could not agree anymore. People, I'm wrapping this up. I will probably have some details on this tomorrow, but I got a text that I really am going to need to take care of. This is family related, and it's something that I really wish that I didn't have to do instantly, but it is instant. I am Captain Tommy Scoville. On the other side of the glass is
Mark Wages.
Between now and tomorrow at 8:00, reach out there and try to save somebody. Have a good evening. We cool?